It's a real pleasure for me to be here. I think I'm going to start right away. Okay. Dear Pierre, it is very important that the movement does not look deliberately like a movement. What I would prefer is for the performer to not look at anything in particular. The feeling is that the performers are using these 2 or 3 minutes of squatting as time for themselves. On their faces, they should have a look which conveys that they are by themselves, and when there are more than one, a very casual form of sociality. They should look like they're doing nothing. It should be a moment of rest. They should be relaxed and in general looking down. What is very important is that the performer's heels are on the ground when they are squatting. The heels should not be lifted. The performers should each squat for about 1.5 to 2 minutes at a time. When there is more than one performer, they should not squat at exactly the same time, nor for the exact same period of time. What I don't want is for people to start and stop squatting simultaneously, because that conveys a choreographed action or militaristic aesthetic. I want the opposite of that. (1989). Which 1989? Are you thinking about the wall or the square? Summer 1994. I have come to Berlin to test the West. Perhaps I should be more precise. I have inserted my body within a test that Germany had been giving itself since reunification, and was squatting under its sign to administer an examination of its aftermath. I've been thinking about the squatting body at the bus stop for more than a decade, ever since my brother told me he knew the people at the bus stop in the suburban city we lived in were Vietnamese refugees, because they squatted even though there were seats. In the 90s, I relied on misrecognition as my medium. And this is a test of how this Asian body reads in this metropolitan part of the West. I was thinking about later that year when I will go back to Berlin to make a work upon Frank Wagner's invitation for an exhibition addressing violence against the other in Germany. Wars in Croatia and Bosnia were in the background, as was the daily violence against guest workers, among which were bodies that could have been mistaken for mine. Winter 1994. Good morning, Berlin. Proposal. Imagine a city of squatters, a city in which everyone created their own chairs with their own bodies. When you are tired or when you need to wait, participate in this position. Observe the city again from this squatting position. February 4th, 1998. Another bus stop. Behind it is a building that would have been owned by the Generali Corporation. There are 131 in the city of Vienna, and I squat in front of every one of them. They are hung low on the wall so that the best vantage point for the close examination of each would be for someone squatting before them. A famous Austrian artist told me it was manipulative of me to hang them so low. So I suppose for him, hanging pictures at eye level is not manipulative. That's the difference between us. When the suits from the corporation come to the foundation, some of them don't even see that there is someone squatting in front of each building. They're delighted to recognize the buildings in the company's collection. At the end of the exhibition, my work will not make it into the collection. Sometimes there is no building, just property on a one-way street. Summer 2008. There is a subplot in Stanley Kwan's film set in the last year of the life of silent film star Run Ling or Yun Lingyong before her suicide. Chinese cinema is transitioning to sound, and Run, born in Shanghai of Cantonese ancestry, is learning Mandarin so that she can work in the talkies. She is Chinese. She speaks Chinese, but she must learn to speak the Chinese of the nation now to do what she used to do. In the middle of the film, there's a 2-minute sequence, a scene in which she and the director of the film studio squat side by side. These motifs become the scaffolding of the work. Divide and further separate what you see, what you hear, and what you read into different kinds of scores: Cantonese, Mandarin, and English. Traditional Chinese script, simplified Chinese script, and Roman alphabet. Quotation, repetition, analogy. Squatting with, squatting under. Summer 2010. On July 16, 1967, in a raid on the Kowloon Motor Bus Workers Union in Samseipo in Hong Kong, a company of the 2nd Battalion, the Queen's Regiment, cordoned off the area and an army helicopter hovered above the premises. I can read the information about the Bus Workers Union, and I know this was from the riots in Hong Kong in 1967. But I did not know the other details for many years. There is no photographer credited, and the image was reproduced courtesy of the government-run Radio Television Hong Kong, RTHK. I encountered the photograph in a book on the history of Hong Kong a few years before 2010, and have since discovered other croppings of the image. But what initially facilitated a meditation on the image was the uncanny systematic way its elements were laid out. Police, the riot gear, a mass arrest, the union, and leftist squatters squatting under a stairwell, down a stairwell, in submission onto a street, echoed by the vertical orientation of the picture. Interested in making a work without a specific form or medium, my task was to return the image into circulation so that it can be reused by the people who come across it. The word proposal is a proposal on 2 registers. It is a delay or deferral for another work to come. And it is a proposal for those who find it to use it as they please. And the artist provided proposals for its recirculation via different demonstrations. July 14. The work was primarily dispersed into 2 conventional industrial areas in Kowloon, a mural at 1A space, a converted cattle depot, an event at Sigma space, a floor of a converted factory. How would this image be used by the people of Hong Kong in 2010, 13 years after Hong Kong sovereignty was transferred? What separates intention and circumstance in collaboration? Who is the squatter? The police, the colonial, the left. The power differentials of habitually squatting bodies are recalibrated when it is enacted away from the metropolitan West, where they're destined to take on one kind of racially othering function. When housed in essentially identical bodies, the mainland body squatting in Hong Kong is nonetheless identified for denigration as an invisible remainder of intolerable difference. 大陸人 mainlanders, 香港人 Hong Kong people. Fall 2014. Remaining formless in a proposal for 4 years, the umbrella movement in the fall and winter of 2014 underscored the urgency of depiction of squatting bodies under the police. Can the work, I wonder, give up its proposal stage and invest fully in its depiction, reworking the original premise, Squatting Project Hong Kong, still unrealized, would now take the shape of an expanded film work comprised of 3 different delineated elements. 1, script and work with several current Hong Kong populations to depict the 30 seconds before and after the image depicted in the 1967 photograph. 2, I will write and construct a separate non-sync audio script in the history of law enforcement in Hong Kong. 3, restage a 75-second scene from M by Fritz Lang, in which a mob rushes up a flight of stairs, only to be beaten down by the police. Summer 2018. Using an invitation to make a new work for the 2018 Guangzhou Biennale. I used the occasion to rehearse how bodies might move in relationship to the image. The 2019 protests are still a year away. In 1967, there were riots, but back then we didn't call them riots. It started in Sun Po Gong at the factory, where they made artificial flowers. I knew because I went to work on the same street. I don't know how exactly, but believe that a labor and management problem arose, and so the workers were riled up. They went on strike and rioted. So we didn't have to go to work. On our street, all the factories closed, and we didn't go to work. Back then, the Wang Dai Xin police station was across the street from Confucian Taishan Secondary School. The neighborhood above was called Wang Dai Xin, but that's not where I lived. I didn't have to go to work, so I had all the time. I was pretty rowdy. I was a tomboy. At home, it was all boys. The only females were me and my mother. Because I didn't have to go to work, I went out looking for fun, and and went over to Wong Dai Sin and saw a lot of people there. They were throwing bottles. The bottles were very clean. Soy sauce bottles, beer bottles, every kind of bottle. They'd been washed, like how we have recycled bottles now. They'd all been washed and were transported to us in some kind of big basket people used to sell vegetables in. They were continually getting replenished. When I saw people throwing bottles, I joined them. Because back then, I also really hated the police. Because we were higher up, we threw the bottles down at the police station. They couldn't rush to come to us. They couldn't come get us because there were too many of us. I don't know why there were so many people. When I think back to more than 50 years ago, I still ask, why were there so many people throwing bottles? I too found it strange. People were throwing bottles around the clock. I myself threw them until dinner time when I went home to eat. I needed to go home because that's when my mother got off work, when my father got off work. I didn't go back at night, but the next day, I'd go back and help throw bottles at the cops again. For how many days? I don't remember. The police only had shields and the old-style batons, the ones that don't retract. They were round, about this long. Because we were throwing bottles from higher up, then where they were, they couldn't rush us. How long did martial law last? I can't remember. But why were there so many trucks bringing baskets of bottles? Day after day, basket after basket, all of them clean, for us to throw at the cops. When I saw them firing tear gas at us, shooting them over our heads, I ran. But afterwards, I returned and continued to throw bottles at the police station. Someone said to me, go get some lapchung, get some rice, dried meat, dried mushroom. I didn't understand. I was 15. Why were people giving away food? I didn't go get any. I only joined in throwing bottles because that's where the action was. I wasn't part of any organization. Nobody brought me there. She said, go to Yamate. That's where they're passing out food. It wasn't until years later that I found out that there were benefits from the groups, the struggle committees. Mau tay à. Mau tay. Mau tay means squat down. August 2019. Working in Beijing during the summer of protests in Hong Kong that would escalate for the rest of the year. 721 in Yunlong had happened. The 5 demands have been articulated. The police monopolizing state-sanctioned violence. But it is the year of the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic. Every document had been translated into Chinese to gain approval from the Cultural Bureau and Ministry. Beijing is a city made for military parades, built for tanks. I go to the police station to register my residence. Recorded on video camera, I'm asked 3 questions. Do you know how to drive? Do you have a driver's license? Do you intend to go to Xinjiang? There are those who support the protest in Hong Kong and had hoped to join the protests themselves. When you are Cantonese in Beijing, People know, they tell you. Over dinner, an artist friend described how everyone's VPN stopped working in June. Suddenly, she said, violent quarrels of unprecedented intensity have erupted among friends in Beijing when the subject is Hong Kong. She did not tell me which side she fell on, but only that we had to just stop, she said, and not discuss Hong Kong. September 8, 2019. For a couple of hours, without intending, I went to meet a friend in Central, but the metro suddenly stopped at the stop before because protests have saturated the station and the streets. Leaving the station, I see maybe 100 or 200 protesters taunting the police in riot gear. The young especially repeat a chant, the Cantonese denigration of the cops, to the tune of London Bridge is falling down. One that makes fun of their education, which compares them to dogs begging for rice. The cops were taunted with, where's your hometown? Where are you from? The insinuation is that they're not Hong Kongers. When I ascend onto the streets, there were thousands of people in the street, but no cars. I wasn't much later that I learned that among them were American flag wavers, singing the US national anthem and praising Donald Trump as a savior. I only caught a glimpse of several flags and did not yet know the extent of the right-wing turn among some of the protesters. I only saw that among the young. I see in the collective joyfulness and efficacy of their mobilizations that they're feeling more alive than they've ever been able to know. This feeling is inspiring. And I deduce that that's why some of them, perhaps many of them, those without access to visas and residencies elsewhere, as I do, feel like they have nothing to lose. Flashes of young people throughout history, acting in concert with or against state apparatus, appear before me. And I know that such drives are also ravenous. I try not to take any pictures with the protesters. I do not want to show their faces. From the second floor of an enclosed mall, where all the stores are shut. I took a short video of the burning of the entrance of metro station. The frenzy of photographers is the punctum, not the fire. Later, in one of these photographs, I see that's where I stood filming, with my phone as a part of the picture. There is no question that I'm trying to find myself in the picture. September 11, 2019. I go with my family to Tai Kwun, a former police station compound, which is now an art and heritage center owned by the Hong Kong Jockey Club. My mother shows us the second floor corner of the office where she was a clerk typist during the 1950s. I go to the jail exhibits by myself, and I knew almost immediately that the videos projecting shadows onto the back walls of the tiny cells would depict what I needed to see. Maukam, meaning squatting in jail, means to do time. Dinner with two members of the extended family who are yellow, meaning they're pro-protest, as opposed to blue, which means pro-police. One shows me a video of her toddler granddaughter saying, "Gayao," add oil, add fuel to the fight. I'm relieved not to have to visit with what is deduced to be the blue or even pale blue side of the family. But upon departure, one of my yellow relatives said with vehemence, her abiding abhorrence for Gongchandong. Does she mean the Cantonese Communist Party? Or does she mean all communists? I cannot completely figure out the difference. And perhaps in her mind, where the only frame of reference is literal, the CCP, there is no difference. She is hopeful for American support. I didn't pursue any further questions, but we embraced at parting. May 4th, 2021. There's no need to rehearse how everything has changed in Hong Kong in the last year. Even before June 30th, 2020, many have had to leave for their safety and well-being. At various points between September 2019 and today, May 4th, a date which commemorates the movement against imperialism in China, 3 different reasons arose to prevent the completion of the work in Hong Kong. In early 2020, even after the sieges and raids on occupied campuses, images of the police, however critical, would have been a toxic trigger among potential performers. Since my work on the whole is the work for the subject as they are, the work would have had to work around the representation of the police. The recruitment of participants and making the work in a public site would be almost impossible in Hong Kong. Since March of 2020, due to the global pandemic, travel to Hong Kong would entail a 14 to 21-day quarantine. And once in Hong Kong, there can be no live participation at performance. The last reason, the June 30th, 2020 security law is a weapon and a barricade. In the March 17, 2020 radio television Hong Kong story, "We Won't Let Arts Undermine Security," Carrie Lam. Reporter Violet Leung reports the art criticism of pro-Beijing lawmaker Eunice Leung, who sees what she's seen to be, quote, spreading hatred against China. We've been to many museums, but most of the display pieces are to show the beauty of arts. But then we have spent so much time and effort to build the West Kowloon Culture District. How come there will be display of art pieces that are suspected to have breached the national security law and also are an insult to the country. In asking Chief Executive Carrie Leung to set up the vetting of art shown at Empress Museum, Leung's response is that she is sure staff are able to tell what is freedom of artistic expression and whether certain pieces are really meant to incite hatred or to destroy relations between two places and undermine national security. We will be on full high alert in watching such matters. September 13, 2019. In the ironwork crevice of a sidewalk next to one of the NTR stations, targeted a few days before, I saw something gleaming and squatted down to pick it up. So this is the kind of glass that we used to call unbreakable glass because its shards are supposedly not sharp. And when they break in an even way so that the broken pieces would resemble something you might want to pick up. So what I think I would want to do now is to think with you about Squatting Project Hong Kong, about where its future, since it cannot actually be made for various reasons. Or maybe I'm premature, perhaps because it is an image of the colonial police, there would be an exemption. It would be seen as a form of protest against imperialism. But if I were to say that to you, I would be betraying my naivete. Maybe all forms of power, at least in the eyes of the Chinese, are sacred. They cannot be violated. And what's left? The leftists who were arrested in 1967, were they a part of the Communist Party? And what's right? If my cousin does not know any other form of communism other than the Chinese Communist Party, how do I explain what a leftist can be otherwise? Is the work thus a type of celebration, or is it an inoculation? Is it a placeholder? Is it nostalgia? Is it spectacle? Is it a phonicon? What will it do? What does it see? Thank you.